Destroying an army, the three brothers fight against Lu Pu. At the close of the last chapter, Tsao's companion was about to slay him. But the memory of why he had decided to join his fortunes with his companion stayed his hand. Rising from his bed before dawn, he mounted his horse and rode away toward his home in the east. Tsao awoke with the day and missed his companion. Thought he thinks me brutal because of a couple of egoistic phrases I used, and so he has gone. I ought to push on too and not linger here. So he traveled as quickly as possible toward home. When he saw his father, he related what had happened and said he wanted to dispose of all the property and enlist soldiers with the money. Our possessions are but small, said his father, and not enough to do anything with. However, there is a graduate here, one Wai Hung, careless of wealth but careful of virtue, whose family is very rich. With his help we might hope for success. A feast was prepared and the rich man invited. Tsao made him a speech. The Hands have lost their lordship and Tung Cho is really a tyrant. He flouts his prince and is cruel to the people, who gnash their teeth with rage. I would restore the Hands, but my means are insufficient. Sir, I appeal to your loyalty and public spirit. He replied, I have long desired this, but so far have not found a man fit to undertake the task. Since you, Merenteer, have so noble a desire, I willingly devote all my property to the cause. This was joyful news, and the call to arms was forthwith prepared and sent far and near. So they established a corps of volunteers and set up a large white recruiting banner with the words "Loyalty and Right" inscribed thereon. The response was rapid, and volunteers came in like raindrops in number. One day came a certain Yo Chin, whose minor name was Wern Chin, and another Lai Tine, also known as Man Chiang. These two were appointed to Tsao's personal staff. Another was one H. Siahu Tun. He was descended from H. Siahu Ying and had been trained from his early boyhood to use the spear and the club. When only 14, he had been attached to a certain master-in-arms. One day someone spoke disrespectfully of his master and Tun killed him. For this deed, however, he had to flee and had been in exile for some time. Now he came to offer his services, accompanied by his brother. Each brought a company of trained men. Really, these two were brothers of Tsao by birth, since his father was originally of the H. Siahu family, and had only been adopted into the Tsao family. A few days later came two other brothers, Tsao Jern and Tsao Hung, each with a company. These two were accomplished horsemen and trained in the use of arms. Then drill began, and Wai Hung spent his treasure freely in buying clothing, armor, flags, and banners. From all sides poured in gifts of grain. When Yuan Shao received Tsao's call to arms, he collected all those under his command to the number of 3 legions. He came to take the oath to Tsao. Next, a manifesto was issued. Tsao and his associates, moved by a sense of duty, now make this proclamation. Tung Cho defies heaven and earth. He is destroying the state and injuring his prince. He pollutes the palace and oppresses the people. He is vicious and cruel. His crimes are heaped up. Now we have received a secret command to call up soldiers, and we are pledged to cleanse the empire and destroy the evildoers. We will raise a volunteer army and exert all our efforts to maintain the dynasty and succor the people. Respond to this, O nobles, by mustering your soldiers. Many from every side answered the summons, as the following list shows. The prefect of Nanyang, Yuan Shu, the governor of Ikao, Han Fu, the governor of Yuchao, Keung Yu, the governor of Yanchao, Liu Tai, the prefect of Honai, Wang Ke Wang, the prefect of Chern Liu, Chang Mo, the prefect of Tungchun, Chio Mao, the prefect of Shanyang, Yuan I, the Hsiang of Chaipai, Pao Hsin, the prefect of Peihai, Keung Yung, the prefect of Quangling Chang Xiao, the governor of H Suchao Tiao Xiaqin, the prefect of H Siliang Ma Tiang, the prefect of Peiping Kungsun San, the prefect of Shangteng Chang Yang, the prefect of Ch Shangsha Sun Qin, the prefect of Pohai Yuan Shao. These contingents varied in size, but each was complete in itself with its officers, civil and military and battle leaders, and they assembled at Luoyang. The prefect of Peiping, Kungsun San, while on his way with his force of a legion and a half, passed through Pingyuan. There he saw among the mulberry trees a yellow flag under which marched a small company. When they drew nearer, he saw the leader was Liu Yuanter. "Good brother, what do you hear? You were kind to me once, and on your recommendation I was made magistrate of this district. I heard you were passing through and came to salute you. May I pray my elder brother to enter into the city and rest his steed?" "Who are these two?" said San, pointing to the other two brothers. "These are Kuan Yu and Chang Fei, my sworn brothers. Were they fighting with you against the rebels?" "All my success was due to their efforts," said Yuan Ter. "And what offices do they fill?" "Kuan Yu is a mounted archer, Fei is a foot archer. Thus are able men buried," said San, sighing. Then he continued, "All the highest in the land are now going to destroy the rebellious Tung Chou. My brother would do better to abandon this petty place and join us in restoring the house of Han." "Why not?" "I should like to go," said Yuan Ter. "If you had let me kill him that other time you would not have this trouble today," said Chang Fei. "Since things are so, let us pack and go," said Kuan Yu. So without more ado the three brothers, with a few horsemen, joined Kungsun San and marched with him to join the great army. One after another, the feudal lords came up and encamped. Their camps extended over 300 li and more. When all had arrived, Tsao, as the head, prepared sacrificial bullocks and horses, and called all the lords to a great assembly to decide upon their plan of attack. Then spake the prefect Wang, saying, "We have been moved by a noble sense of right to assemble here. Now must we first choose a chief and bind ourselves to obedience." Then said Tsao, "For 4 generations the highest offices of state have been filled by members of the Yuan family, and his clients and supporters are everywhere. As a descendant of ancient ministers of Han, Yuan Shao is a suitable man to be our chief lord." Yuan Shao again and again declined this honor, but they all said, "It must be he, there is no other." And then he agreed. So a 3-storied altar was built, and they planted about it the 5 banners of the divisions of space. And they set up white yaks' tails and golden axes and emblems of military authority, and the seals of leadership round about. All being ready, the chief lord was invited to ascend the altar. Clad in ceremonial robes and girt with a sword, Yuan Shao reverently ascended. There he burned incense, made obeisance, and recited the oath. "The house of Han has fallen upon evil days. The bands of imperial authority are loosened. The rebel minister, Tung Chou, takes advantage of the discord to work evil, and calamity falls upon honorable families. Cruelty overwhelms simple folk. We, Shao and his confederates, fearing for the safety of the imperial prerogatives, have assembled military forces to rescue the state. We now pledge ourselves to exert our whole strength and act in concord to the utmost limit of our powers. There must be no disconcerted or selfish action. Should any depart from this pledge, may he lose his life and leave no posterity. Almighty Heaven and universal Mother Earth and the enlightened spirits of our forefathers, be ye our witnesses." Reading finished, he smeared the blood of the sacrifice upon his lips and upon the lips of those who shared the pledge. All were deeply affected by the ceremony, and many shed tears. This done, the oath chief was supported down from the high place and led to his tent, where he took the highest place, and the others arranged themselves according to rank and age. Here wine was served. Presently Tsao said, "It behoves us all to obey the chief we have this day set up, and support the state. There must be no feeling of rivalry or superiority based upon numbers." Xiao replied, "Unworthy as I am, yet as elected chief I must impartially reward merit and punish offenses. Let each see to it that he obeys the national laws and the army precepts. These must not be broken." "Only thy commands are to be obeyed," cried all. "My brother, Yuan Shu, is appointed chief of the commissariat. He must see to it that the whole camp is well supplied. But the need of the moment is a van leader who shall go to Sushui Pass and provoke a battle. The other forces must take up positions in support." Then the prefect of Changsha offered himself for this service. "You are valiant and fierce and equal to this service," said Yuan Shao. The force under Sun Qin set out and presently came to the pass. The guard there sent a swift rider to the capital to announce to the tyrant the urgency of the situation. Ever since Tung Chou had secured his position, he had given himself up to luxury without stint. When the urgent news reached the advisor Lai Ju, he at once went to his master, who much alarmed called a great council. Lu Pu stood forth and said, "Do not fear, my father. I look upon all the lords without the pass as so much stubble, and with the men of our fierce army I will put every one of them to death and hang their heads at the gates of the capital. With your aid I can sleep secure," said Tung Chou. But someone behind Lu Pu broke in upon his speech, saying, "A butcher's knife to kill a chicken. There is no need for the Marquis to go. I will cut off their heads every one as easily as I would take a thing out of my pocket." Chou looked up and his eyes rested on a stalwart man of fierce mien, lithe and supple. He had a small round head like a leopard and shoulders like an ape's. His name was Hua Seung. Chou rejoiced at his bold words and at once gave him high rank and command over 5 legions of horse and foot. He with Lai Su, Hu Chern and Ko Tsern hastily moved toward the pass. Among the feudal lords, Pao Sin was jealous lest the chosen van leader should win 2 great honors. Wherefore he endeavored to meet the foe first, and so he secretly dispatched his brother Chung with 3 companies by a by road. As soon as this small force reached the pass, they offered battle. Hua Seung at the head of half, a company of mail-clad horsemen swept down from the pass crying, "Flee not, rebel." But Pao Chung was afraid and turned back. Seung came on, his arm rose, the sword fell, and Chung was cut down from his horse. Most of his company were captured. His head was sent to the minister's palace. Hua Seung was promoted to Tutu, or commander-in-chief. Sun Qin presently approached the pass. He had 4 captains: Xiecheng Piu, whose weapon was an iron-spined snaky lance; Huang Kai, who wielded an iron whip; Han Tang, a swordsman; and Su Mu, who fought with a pair of swords. The commander's son wore a helmet of fine silver wrapped round with a purple turban. He carried across his body his sword of ancient ingot iron, and rode a dappled horse with flowing mane. He advanced to the pass and hailed the defenders, calling them helpers of a fool, and summoned them to surrender. A half-legion under Hu Chern went out against him, whom Xiecheng Piu with the snaky lance rode out and engaged. After a very few bouts, Hu Chern was killed on the spot by a thrust through the throat. Then the signal was given for the main army to advance. But from the pass they rained down showers of stones, which proved too much for the assailants, and they retired into camp at Liangtung to await further help from Yuan Shao. An urgent message for supplies was sent to the commissary, but one said to him, the controller, "This Sun Qin is a very tiger. Should he take the capital and destroy Tung Chou, we should have a tiger in place of a wolf. Do not send him grain. Starve his men, and that will decide the fate of that army." And Yuan Shu gave ear to the detractors and sent no grain or forage. Soon the hungry soldiers showed their disaffection by indiscipline, and the spies bore the news to the defenders of the pass, who decided upon a speedy attack in front and rear. They hoped to capture the Sun Qin. So the soldiers of the attacking face were told off and given a full meal. At dark they left the pass and crept by secret paths to the rear of Sun Qin's camp. The moon was bright and the wind cool. They arrived about midnight and the drums beat an immediate attack. Sun Qin hastily donned his fighting gear and rode out. He ran straight into Hua Hseong, and the two warriors engaged. But before they had exchanged many passes, Lai Su's men came up and set fire to whatever would burn. Sun's army were thrown into confusion and fled like rats. A general melee ensued, and soon only Tsu Mu was left at his chief's side. These two broke through the pass and fled. Hua Hseong coming in hot pursuit, Sun Qin took his bow and let fly 2 arrows in quick succession, but both missed. He fitted a third arrow to the string, but drew the bow so fiercely that it snapped. He cast the magpie-painted bow to the earth and set off at full gallop. Then spake Tsu Mu, saying, "My lord's purple turban is a mark that the rebels will too easily recognize. Give it to me and I will wear it." So Sun Qin exchanged his silver helmet with the turban for his faithful friend's headpiece, and the two men parted, riding different ways. The pursuers, looking only for the purple turban, went after its wearer, and Sun escaped along a by-road. Tsu Mu, hotly pursued, then tore off the headdress which he hung on the post of a half-burned house as he passed and dashed into the thick woods. Hua Hseong's men, seeing the purple turban standing motionless, dared not approach, but they surrounded it on every side and shot at it with arrows. Presently they discovered the trick, went up and seized it. This was the moment that the hidden man awaited. At once he rushed forth, his 2 swords whirling about, and dashed at the leader. But Hua Hseong was too quick. With a loud yell he slashed at Tsu Mu and cut him down. Day had now broken, and the victor led his men back to the pass. The 3 other leaders in time met their chief, and the soldiers halted. Sun Qin was much grieved at the loss of his generous subordinate. When news of the disaster reached Yuan Shao, he was greatly chagrined and called all the lords to a council. They assembled, and Kung Sun San was the last to arrive. When all were seated in the tent, Yuan Shao said, "The brother of General Pao, disobeying the rules we made for our guidance, rashly went to attack the enemy. He was slain, and with him many of our soldiers. Now Sun Wern Ti has been defeated. Thus our fighting spirit has suffered, and what is to be done?" Everyone was silent. Lifting his eyes, the chief looked round from one to another till he came to Kung Sun San, and then he remarked 3 men who stood behind his seat. They were of striking appearance as they stood there, all 3 smiling cynically. "Who are those men behind you?" said the chief. Kung Sun told Yuan Ter to come forward and said, "This is Liu Pei, magistrate of Piying Yuan, and a brother of mine who shared my humble cottage." "It must be the Liu Yuan Ter who broke up the Yellow Turban Rebellion," said Tia Sao. "It is he," said his patron, and he ordered Liu Pei to make his obeisance to the assembly, to whom he then related his services and his origin, all in full detail. "Since he is of the Han line, he should be seated," said the chief, and he bade Liu Pei sit. Liu Pei modestly thanked him. Said Shao, "This consideration is not for your fame and office. I respect you as a scion of the imperial family." So Liu Pei took his seat in the lowest place of the long line of lords. and his two brothers with folded arms took their stations behind him. Even as they were at this meeting came in a scout to say that Hua H-seung with a company of mail-clad horsemen was coming down from the pass. They were flaunting Sun Qin's captured purple turban on the end of a bamboo pole. The enemy was soon hurling insults at those within the stockade and challenging them to fight. "Who dares go out to give battle?" said the chief. "I will go," said Yu Sher, a leader who belonged to the train of Yuan Shu. So he went, and almost immediately one came back to say that he had fallen in the third bout. Fear began to lay its cold hand on the assembly. Then said another, "I have a brave warrior among my men. Pian Feng is his name, and he could slay this Hua H-seung." So Pian was ordered out to meet the foe. With his great battle-axe in his hand, he mounted and rode forth. But soon came the direful tidings that he too had fallen. The faces of the gathering paled at this. "What a pity my two able leaders, Yen Liang and Wen Chu, are not here. Then should we have someone who would not fear this man," said the chief. He had not finished when from the lower end a voice cried, "I will go, take his head and lay it before you here." All turned to look at the speaker. He was tall and had a long beard. His eyes were those of a phoenix and his eyebrows thick and bushy like caterpillars. His face was a swarthy red and his voice deep as the sound of a great bell. "Who is he?" asked the chief. Kung Sun San told them it was Quan Yu, brother of Liu Yuan-ter. "And what is he?" "He is in the train of Liu Yuan-ter as a mounted archer." "An insult to us all," roared the chief's brother from his place. "Have we no leader? How dare an archer speak thus before us? Let us beat him forth." But Tsao intervened. "Peace, O Kung Lu. Since he speaks great words, he is certainly valiant. Let him try. If he fail, then you may reproach him. Hua H-seung will laugh at us if we send a mere archer to fight him," said the chief. "He looks no common person, and how can the enemy know he is but a bowman?" said Tsao. "If I fail, then can you take my head?" cried Quan. Tsao bade them heat some wine, and offered a stirrup cup to Quan Yu as he went out. "Pour it out," said Quan. "I shall return in a little space." He went with his sword in his hand and vaulted into the saddle. Those in the tent heard the fierce roll of the drums and then a mighty sound as if skies were falling and earth rising, hills trembling and mountains tearing asunder. And they were sore afraid. And while they were listening with ears intent, lo! the gentle tinkle of horse bells, and Quan Yu threw at their feet the head of the slain leader, their enemy Hua H-seung. The wine was still warm. This doughty deed has been celebrated in verse. The power of the man stands first in all the world. At the gate of the camp was heard the rolling of the battle drums. Then Yun Chang set aside the wine cup till he should have displayed his valor, and the wine was still warm when the enemy had been slain. Tsao was pleased at this success. But Chang Fei's voice was heard, shouting, "Brother, you slew the leader. Why did you not break through the pass and seize Tung Chou? Could there have been a better time?" Again arose the voice of the peevish Yuan Shu. "We high officials are too meek and yielding. Here is the petty follower of a small magistrate daring to flaunt his prowess before us. Expel him from the tent, I say." But again Tsao interposed. "Shall we consider the station of him who has done a great service? If you hold a mere magistrate in such honor, then I simply withdraw," said Yuan Shu. "Is a word enough to defeat a grand enterprise?" said Tsao. He told Kung Sun San to lead his 3 companions back to their own camp, and the other chiefs then dispersed. That night, he secretly sent presents of flesh and wine to soothe the 3 after this adventure. When Hua H-seung's men straggled back and told the story of defeat and death, Lai Su was greatly distressed. He wrote urgent letters to his master, who called in his trusted advisors to a council. Lai Ju summed up the situation. We have lost our best leader, and the rebel power has thereby become very great. Yuan Shao is at the head of this confederacy, and Yuan Wei of the same family is holder of high office in the government. If those in the capital combine with those in the country, we may suffer. Therefore we must remove them. So I request you, Sir Minister, to place yourself at the head of your army and break this confederation. Tung Cho agreed and at once ordered Lai Tsui and Qos Su to take half a company and surround the residence of Yuan Wei, the Ti Fu, slay every soul, and hang the head of the high officer outside the gate as a trophy. And Cho commanded 20 legions to advance in 2 armies. The first 5 legions were under Lai Tsui and Qos Su, and they were to hold Sushui Pass. They should not necessarily fight. The other 15 legions under Tung Cho himself went to Tiger Trap Pass. This pass is 50 li from Luoyang, and as soon as they arrived Tung Cho bade Lu Pu take 3 legions and make a strong stockade on the outside of the pass. The main body with Cho would occupy the pass. News of this movement reaching the Confederate lords, the chief summoned a council. Said Tsao, the occupation of the pass would cut our armies in 2, therefore must we oppose Tung Cho's army on the way. So 8 of the Confederate lords went in the direction of the pass to oppose their enemy. Tsao and his men were a reserve to render help where needed. Of the 8, the prefect of Honai was the first to arrive, and Lu Pu went to give battle with 3 companies of mailed horsemen. When Wang Kewang, prefect of Honai, had ordered his army, horse and foot, in battle array, he took his station under the great banner and looked over at his foe. There he saw Lu Pu, a conspicuous figure in front of the line. On his head was a triple-curved headdress of ruddy gold. He wore a robe of Sichuan silk embroidered with flowers, and over that breast and back mail, adorned with a gaping animal's head, joined by rings at the sides and girt to his waist with a belt fastened by a beautiful lion head clasp. His bow and arrows were slung on his shoulders, and he carried a trident halberd huakai. He was seated on his snorting steed, the hare. Indeed, he was the man among men, as his steed was the horse among horses. "Who dares go out to fight him?" asked Wang Kewang, turning to those behind him. In response, a tried warrior named Fang spurred to the front, his spear set ready for battle. The 2 met. Before the 5th bout, Fang fell under a thrust of the halberd and Lu Pu dashed forward. Wang Kewang's men could not stand and scattered in all directions. Lu Pu went to and fro slaying all he met. He was quite irresistible. Happily 2 other troops came up and rescued the wounded leader, and his opponent retreated. The 3, having lost many men, withdrew 30 li and made a stockade. And before long, the remaining 5 lords came up and joined them. They held a council. "This Lu Pu is irresistible," said they. And while they sat there anxious and uncertain, it was announced that Lu Pu had returned to challenge them. Each mounted his horse and placed himself at the head of his force, each body in its station on lofty cliffs. Around them was the opposing army, innumerable horse and foot, their embroidered banners waving in the breeze. They attacked. Mu Shun, a leader from Shangtang, rode out but fell at the first encounter with Lu Pu. This frightened the others. Then galloped forth Wu Enquo of the Iron Mace. Lu Pu, whirling his halberd and urging on his steed, came to meet him. The 2 fought, well matched for half a score bouts, when a blow from the halberd broke Wu Enquo's wrist. Letting his mace fall to the ground, he fled. Then all 8 of the lords led forth their men to his rescue, and Lu Pu retired. The fighting then ceased, and after their return to camp another council met. Tsao said, "No one can stand against the prowess of Lu Pu. Let us call up all the lords and evolve some good plan. If only Lu Pu were taken, his master could easily be killed. While the council was in progress, again came Lu Pu to challenge them, and again they moved out against him. This time Kung Sun San, flourishing his spear, went to meet the enemy. After a very few bouts, San turned and fled, Lu Pu following at the topmost speed of the hare. The hare was 1,000 li-a-day horse, swift as the wind. As they watched, the hare gained rapidly upon the flying horseman, and his rider's spear was poised ready to strike San just behind the heart. Just then dashed in a third rider with round, glaring eyes and a bristling mustache, and armed with a long, snake-like spear. "Stay, O thrice-named slave!" roared he, "I, Chang Fei, await you." Seeing this opponent, Lu Pu left the pursuit of San and engaged the new adversary. Fei fought with all his energies. They too were worthily matched, and they exchanged 100 bouts with no advantage to either side. Then Kuan Yu rode out with his huge and weighty moon-curved sword and attacked Lu Pu on the other flank. The three steeds stood like the letter T, and their riders battered away at each other for nearly 20 bouts. Yet still Lu Pu stood firm. Then Liu Yuanter rode out to his brother's aid, his double sword raised ready to strike. The steed with the flowing mane was urged in at an angle, and now Lu Pu had to contend with 3 warriors at whom he struck one after another, and they at him, the flashing of the warriors' weapons looking like the revolving lamps suspended at the New Year. And the spectators gazed rapt with amazement at such a battle. But Lu Pu's guard began to weaken and fatigue seized him. Looking hard in the face of Yuanter, he feigned a fierce thrust, thus making him suddenly draw back. Then, lowering his halberd, Lu dashed through the angle thus opened and got away. But was it likely they would allow him to escape? They whipped their steeds and followed hard. The men of the 8 armies cracked their throats with thunderous cheers and all dashed forward, pressing after Lu Pu as he made for the shelter of the pass. And first among his pursuers were the 3 heroic brothers. An ancient poet has told of this famous fight in these lines. The fateful day of Han came in the reigns of Huan and Ling. Their glory declined as the sun sinks at the close of day. Tung Chou, infamous minister of state, pulled down the youthful sovereign from his throne. It is true Liu Hc was a weakling, too timid for his times. Then Tsao proclaimed abroad these wicked deeds, and the great lords, moved with anger, assembled their forces. In council met they and chose as their oath chief Yuan Shao, pledged themselves to maintain the ruling house and tranquility. Of the warriors of that time, peerless Lu Pu was the boldest. His valor and prowess are sung by all within the 4 seas. He clothed his body in silver armor like the scales of a dragon. On his head was a golden headdress, fastened with a massive pin about his waist a shaggy belt. The clasp, 2 wild beasts' heads with gripping jaws. His flowing, broidered robe fluttered about his form. His swift courser bounded over the plain, a mighty wind following. His terrible halberd flashed in the sunlight, bright as a placid lake. Who dared face him as he rode forth to challenge? The bowels of the Confederate lords were torn with fear, and their hearts trembled within them. Then leaped forth Chang Fei, the valiant warrior of the North, gripped in his mighty hand the long snake-like spear. His mustache bristled with anger, standing stiff like wire. His round eyes glared, lightning flashes darted from them. Neither quailed in the fight, but the issue was undecided. Quan Yun Xiecheng stood out in front, his soul vexed within him. Black dragon, his sword shone white as hoar frost in the sunlight. His bright-colored fighting robe fluttered like butterfly wings. Demons and angels shrieked at the thunder of his horse hoofs. In his eyes was fierce anger, a fire to be quenched only in blood. Next Yuanter joined the battle, gripping his twin sword blades. The heavens themselves trembled at the majesty of his wrath. These 3 closely beset Lu Pu, and long drawn out was the battle. Always he warded their blows. never faltering a moment. The noise of their shouting rose to the sky, and the earth re-echoed it. The heat of battle ranged to the frozen pole star. Worn out, feeling his strength fast ebbing, Lu Bu thought to flee. He glanced at the hills around and thither would fly for shelter. Then, reversing his halberd and lowering its lofty point, hastily he fled, loosing himself from the battle. With head low bent, he gave the rein to his courser, turned his face away and fled to Huleaquen. The three brothers maintained the pursuit to the pass. Looking up, they saw an immense umbrella of black gauze fluttering in the west wind. "Certainly there is Tung Cho," cried Chang Fei. "What is the use of pursuing Lu Bu? Better far seize the chief rebel and so pluck up the evil by the roots." And he whipped up his steed toward the pass. To quell rebellion, seize the leader if you can. If you need a wondrous service, then first find a wondrous man. The following chapters will unfold the result of the battle.